Hey, y'all, Doug Paget here from Vote Common Good. I want to talk to you about something really important when it comes to trying to stop Donald Trump's hostile takeover of the federal government and his desire to be treated like a king. Here's where it comes from. It comes from something in our Constitution that's often referred to as the Unitary Executive Theory. Now, that might be a term you've never heard before, unless, I don't know, maybe you went to law school and studied constitutional law. And if you did, then you would know that in the powers that are granted to the president, the decision was made to put those powers in a single individual rather than a group. The Constitutional Congress was having to make some decisions. Was the executive branch of the three branches of government going to be led by a group, or was it going to be led by an individual? Now, that was a real choice back in 1787. We've sort of become comfortable with the idea that we have a single president of the United States. And certain powers are granted to that unitary executive. And the unitary executive theory that's currently alive and well in this Trump administration and has been working for 40 plus years from the Reagan administration forward has been argued by a group of neoconservatives. Now, this will take you all the way back to William Barr before he was the attorney general in Donald Trump's administration. He was an attorney general previous to that, and he worked in the administration of Ronald Reagan, and so did a whole number of the current Supreme Court justices work in the administration of Ronald Reagan. And those people started arguing that the unitary executive theory was necessary. Now, they were really bothered by how much restriction had been put on the executive branch because of the behaviors of Richard Nixon. And you might know that some of these people came up as real proteges of Richard Nixon. You might also know that Richard Nixon famously has said, if the president does it, then it can't be illegal. That's an argument of a particular version of the unitary executive theory, meaning that no other branch of the government can put any restriction on the president. You'll hear Donald Trump say that. You'll hear some of the people in his administration, like Stephen Miller, saying this very thing. No judge, no district court judge, no federal judge, not even the Supreme Court can limit the power of the president. This is a real extension of this unitary executive theory into territory that it's never been in before. So Trump is pushing these boundaries. Now, why is this important? This is important because we can't simply go out and make the argument we don't have kings in this country. Now, we need to protest, we need to march, we need to join into all the no kings marches. I'm going to be a part of those. I hope you're a part of them. But we also need to know where this argument comes from, because it's in the unitary executive theory where we find the very provisions that can stop Donald Trump's extension of this theory to the carte blanche narrative that he can do whatever he wants. So I'm going to ask you to go to school a bit and learn a bit about the unitary executive theory. You can find podcasts on it. You can Google it. You can ask ChatGPT, some great material in there on it, and ask the question of any representative or any friend you're speaking to. What are the limits on the executive in the executive branch? Should there be any? Donald Trump says no. Should there be the standard by which we have lived for 250 plus years in this country? And the answer is yes. Now, every law decision is determined by those who interpret the law. That's why we have judges. That's why we have judge rulings. That's why we make new laws that are going to correspond to the Constitution. Our current branch of government that should be determining this is not the judicial branch. It should be the legislative branch. And that's Congress. That's the House of Representatives and the Senate. They should clarify this point, not let just random lawyers or Supreme Court justices throw their own interpretation on this. They can set laws and limits around what a president can do and what's legal for a president to do. And that's what needs to be done. So the notion that we have a unitary executive is a really good choice in this country. We don't want the presidency to be decided by committee. But the theory that then that person is not bound by any laws passed by the legislative branch, and they're certainly not bound by any decisions of the judicial branch, that steps out of the American tradition. That's why Donald Trump, in my opinion, is the most un-American president we have ever had. And the people surrounding him, the people arguing for this unitary executive theory that gives him total and complete control, that's something that we need to speak up against and we need to stop. So we might want to say it in the casual colloquial way of we have no kings in this country, but we can actually say the unitary executive does have limits. Look, we can always get smarter. We can always become more informed. We can always help other people around us understand the arguments being made. Because I promise you, the people inside the Trump administration, they understand what they're doing with the Unitary Executive Theory. And those of us who are going to raise our voices, we also need to understand what they're doing with it. Because in the United States system, the solution to our struggles are found within the structure of our government. So we need to understand it. We need to call it out, say there are no kings. And even though we have a unitary executive, there are bounds. And those bounds need to stop this president because he is out of control. And can you imagine if a president even more corrupt than this one, and the way the Republicans are going right now, there seems to be no bounds on the corruption that they will tolerate in a president of their party. Imagine what that person could do if the notions argued by Donald Trump become settled law in this country. They cannot be. We will do all that we can to make sure that they don't, and we will use the very Constitution that he's seeking to undermine to be the stop for them. I'm Doug Padgett from Vote Common Good. You can follow this work and other work we're doing over at votecommongood.com. Thanks so much.